from screen to shelf.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to a very, very special. They are all special. They are like our hundreds of children's at this point. Very special From Screen to Shelf episode. It is episode 41, and we are finally here. We've let MaXXXine soak in our soul, in our DNA, in our brains, and in our cells. We are now one with MaXXXine after a month of theatrical release. So we feel like it is appropriate to go ahead and dissect and more or less rank X, Pearl, and MaXXXine. We're going to do it in that exact order. We talked a little bit. We decided it was best to go in release order, not necessarily chronological order. Go from oldest to the most fresh. So the way that we're going to open it up, and we're going to start with Gabe on how he ranks the movies. Spot. Yep. So we're going to go ahead and rank them.
Yeah, dude. So my ranking is Pearl, X, and MaXXXine. And I already know what your ranking is. I already know.
No, you don't. What?
Yeah.
What?
I already
what do you
know.
mean?
I mean, I'm curious. So let's pass the torch to Will because we haven't talked to him about MaXXXine yet. So,
yeah. Well, you guys know how I feel about Pearl. Although I do think overall X is the more enjoyable film for a lot of people, and I totally agree with that sentiment. Personally, for me, I think Pearl for me takes the cake. I think Pearl is the most, I guess we could say, intimate portrait of the trilogy in terms of character study. But I'd rank Pearl number 1, I'd rank X 2, and I would put MaXXXine at 3 after having seen it. Yeah,
interesting. So yeah, like MaXXXine's definitely 1, then it goes X and then Pearl. No, I just fucking no, I just had to throw off.
I was like, "Whoa!"
Yeah.
She's like, "I already know your ranking."
Yeah, just give it to us, bro. We already know.
It pretty much goes in release order. I think the best came first, X, Pearl, MaXXXine. Now I do enjoy Pearl almost just as much, but for different reasons that I'll break down here soon. But we wanted to go ahead instead of just giving it to you at the end, since we're going to go ahead and dissect these movies. We're probably going to, be fanboying over it a little bit. So we figured we'd go ahead and give you the rankings and then go ahead and start talking about the movies. So,
Mia.
Mia.
I love you.
I mean, hey, you can't disregard X as being the best because it's the only one with Kid Cudi.
Because he had that freaking performance, man. I can't forget about it.
You get Kid Cudi ass cheeks, man. Peak.
But yeah. I mean X. So I mean, let's talk about X because we're gonna talk about chronological order. And X, I agree with you, Chase. X and Pearl are like so close in terms of like quality for me. Yeah. The only reason I went with Pearl is just because I do, and I think it's more of a preference thing. I think it's just because I do like more like character studies and, like you said, more intimate kind of environments and movies. So that's kind of like what I lean towards. But like if you're looking for more of the like X was such a fresh take on the slasher genre, and I think that quality is definitely there. So X, the reason I appreciate X so much, man, is just because it was just so different from something that I've seen like a million times. We've seen like a million slasher movies, but I'd never seen something where you have a slasher movie that's carried by this theme of not just sex, but you're the way people perceive you. I want to be a star. Yeah. And it's like you have this it's this perfect kind of scenario where you have Mia Goth and you have older Mia Goth, but like she's lived through it already, and then she's living through it right now, and it's like you get both of those perspectives in the midst of this crazy slasher the stuff we want to see, the blood and guts, but it's like you really have a solid story there. And then on top of it, you get the the cinematography. I think Ty West killed it with doing this kind of old school. It looks like I don't know if it's like 8mm or 30mm film. What was he trying to make it
was
look like?
digitally added grain. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say he was trying to go for like the 35 millimeter look because it's not grainy enough to be 16, but for sure I get the vibe of 35
Oh yeah,
for sure.
yeah, 16 is what I meant. Yeah. But like
Yeah.
just a kind of that, raunchy, grainy kind of look to it.
Yeah.
And it's such a fun movie, dude. It really is. And I can see 100% why it's your your top of the ranking. I don't
Yeah.
disagree with it at all. It's just they're so different. You know what I mean? X and Pearl are
Yeah.
just so movies. But I think that's where Ty West succeeded with this movie, is that you gave us like this story that was kind of threaded underneath all this slashing and the blood and the guts and the sex, but it was this solid story that you were like, I really want to know more, not only about Mia Goth's character, like her fixation with like fame and being famous and people loving her, but also you want to know more about Pearl, who's this
Yeah.
crazy, demented, sick, twisted person. So I think he killed it in that regard, man. And I think that's what I had been asking for a while with a slasher movie, is just give us a little bit of, sounds kind of corny, but a little bit of character development, just something that we can
Yeah.
kind of hold on to in terms of a narrative. So that's why I love X so much. I think that's why it stood out for me. I know for you though, it's like you consider X to be like the holy grail of horror movies the past decade or maybe even more. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say it's easily the best horror movie of the 2020s so far. It's up there. I mean, it would really depend on what I'm looking for, but personally, I got to preface that. Personally, I'm not declaring it.
Mia
I'm not
Goth.
giving X, yeah, I'm not giving X the key to the city over here. I don't have that power. But I think X is up there with like When Evil Lurks as some of the best horror of the 2020s that's come out. Of course, they're two completely different things, but whenever we're taking something like not to go on a tangent about When Evil Lurks. When Evil Lurks is unique in every which way,
Mhm.
So it's easy to say that that's really, really good. But it's exactly what you just said about like I've seen so many slashers, so damn many, that I never get bored of them because they always have like a different story. They've always got like it's the kills you tune in for. I'm not usually tuning in for the story or the characters that much. It's more the theme and the way they're dying. That's typically
Yeah.
the variation between them. The kills in here are very generic and rather honestly uneventful. It's the way that they're done in this movie. Like whenever it comes to Jenna Ortega's boyfriend, I believe it was Chris is his name, whenever he's leaving the house and Pearl like pretty much gets him out of the car, or he walks out of the car and she just starts going. The way that it was done with the score in that, it's so simple. He doesn't go out in like a blaze of glory or anything like that. Like whenever the blood hits the lights on the
That's what I was
car
going to
and
say.
it
The
turns
lighting
the
in that
red.
scene. Yeah. Just that's what
Yeah,
made it for
man.
me 100%.
Yeah, it's so simple, but it's those simple things that make it iconic at that point for me. And everything about it, like it's not really a slow burn, but it has some very, very like suave, even flowing type of moments. Like whenever Mia Goth is in the lake and you have the alligator that's coming up and it makes you feel tense. It's like, oh shit, well, I thought you were the main character, but I guess not. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how I felt about it. And it was so goofy, like the Kid Cudi scene at the gas station when she's like, if you angle it like this, it looks like he's filling up the car with his cock. And it's just goofy, while also trying to be different and also take itself seriously and build this universe on a very small budget, which that's a pretty solid cast for such a small budget. They
Yeah.
must have really just believed in the product. I think the ending's extremely well done. I will not settle for a life I do not deserve, and everything tying together. I think it's excellent. I think the way the movie opens up is excellent. I think the cinematography, excellent. I just think everything about it, like I really do think it's my most rewatched movie that's came out since 2020. I really do enjoy every single thing about it. Mia Goth's excellent. It's what helped springboard it. Like I liked her in. I don't think Will and I have talked about this, but I'm gonna go ahead and shout out a movie I love almost as much as X. Possibly A Cure for Wellness. I was on a hunt to get the Blu-ray for that because it wasn't for a while, and I loved that movie, and I was a fan of her. I liked her in that movie, but she didn't have a breakout role in that, and I never watched Nymphomaniac, right? So everybody on here just absolutely gives it their 110%. Everybody was all bought in. And another thing where it does things differently is the Jenna Ortega scene with her boyfriend, whenever he's just like, it's possible to just make a good dirty movie. And then she just starts getting vengeful. And she's like, well, fuck it. If you don't feel any type of way, put me in. And I just find that so fucking brilliant, man. Like, it's just so well done. And then, his whole like chaos that starts happening in his mind and how creepy Pearl is. Yeah, it's just it's an easy 10 out of 10 movie for me. And it does have some of its flaws and stuff like that. It's just I can easily look past those because I watch so many B and Z grade horror movies
Mhm.
all the time. So to get something like you just said that's refreshing, it's a different take. It didn't reinvent the genre, but it definitely left a landmark. I feel like that'll be felt for the next 10, 15 years. I feel like this is going to be a movie that in 10, 15 years or even 40 years will be talked about like Halloween. I really strongly feel like this trilogy will be talked about like that because it's already extremely popular as it is.
Yeah. I agree 100%. And I agree that conversation with it's funny, right? Like the whole sex thing, the dirty movie. You could make a good dirty movie, cinematic and all that stuff. And she's like, "Well, screw it, I'll be in it." But it also
Yeah.
lends itself to like this just the themes of sex and like the differences in their perspectives of sex and relationships. And I'm like, I'm getting
Yeah.
like this 10-minute like conversation about this in a freaking slasher movie. And it's
Yeah.
handled so well, you know what I mean? Because in the next scene, obviously, someone's just dying, and and then there's
Yeah.
jokes, sprinkled throughout the movie. It's honestly, I would even argue, I don't think this movie has any flaws. To be honest with you,
Really?
I'd give it a perfect 10 out of 10. I didn't the first time I
Whoa, I
saw
didn't
it,
know you felt that way.
yeah, I came out of this movie like this movie was so much fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I could nitpick and maybe find something, but like there was
Yeah.
nothing that stuck out to me where I was like, yeah, I'll give it like a 9 out of 10 because of this reason. Like it was just I felt kind of like with Godzilla -1 where I just had such a good time and it
Yeah.
was something so fresh and different that I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna give it a 10 out of 10.
Damn, that's
But
interesting.
yeah, no, I mean, I just don't. I mean,
Yeah.
I could rewatch it again. I saw it before MaXXXine came out, but yeah, man. I mean, it was such a fun movie.
Fuck
Um,
yeah, man. I honestly
yeah,
thought it was like an 8 out of 10 for you because you've got a much more critical eye than me when it comes to movies. Like there'll be times we
yeah,
talk
a
about
little
things and
bit
you'll be
for
like,
sure.
"Did you notice that speck of dust in the upper right corner at a minute 31 seconds?" I'll be like, "No, dude, I didn't." You know
Yeah,
what I
it's like, well,
mean?
now it's a fucking
So
7 out of 10 for me. Yeah.
yeah, no, so that's interesting. You actually reminded me of that when you were talking about the in theater experience. I think the audience will get a kick out of this, and I think I might have told you guys about this. Did I tell you about the audio blowing out? The first I saw it 3 times in theaters because the audio blew out.
Oh yeah, you told me something about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so just a funny story about this movie. I was really into it. I felt it was a little bit slow, but it was just getting kicked off. The part where MaXXXine and what's his name, Harold,
Mhm.
Harry, Henry, Harold starts
Harold,
with
I
an
think,
H.
is the husband.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the husband, and whenever they put the vinyl, the record on the vinyl player and put the needle on there. So it starts spinning, and
Hmm.
so it started getting really, really fucking loud. And I was like, "Oh wow, this guy really is a genius." The way that it's not a jump scare; he's just really getting me tense right now. It's getting really loud in here right now. Like I was like, "Damn!" And then it goes on for about 10 seconds. I was like, "Damn, okay, like holy
Yeah.
shit." And then it goes to the scene because it cuts to the scene with Mia walking down the hallway. And I was like, oh, well, now she's about to get killed. You know, it's super loud right now. That's what happens in horror movies. And when I say it was super loud, I'm not exaggerating when I say it's one of the loudest noises and sounds I've ever experienced in my life. Like,
Chase is
it
thinking it's
was
like some
that loud.
experimental horror kind of thing.
Yeah, dude, exactly. And so what ended up happening, I didn't realize that the speakers had blown out until it transitions to them talking on the couches right after she walks down that. That's
Oh
almost like 2
crap.
minutes, man. And
Yeah.
I'm just sitting there like, damn, this guy's got me on the edge of my seat, man. But
That
it ended up
sucks
being they
though,
had to
because
cancel
I
it.
hate
Yeah.
that for like an initial screening. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah, but I
never a
mean, I
fun
got free
thing.
tickets to go see it again, and then I watched it a week later. I think I just went back the next showing. I was like, whenever the next theater will show it.
Yeah.
So I went immediately because, dude, I was like 35 minutes left. I can't just not finish my day not knowing how this
Oh man,
ends.
that sucks. I'd be
My
pissed.
last memory of this is the audio blowing out. I need to have better memories than that. So yeah, a little fun story for the audience out there. That was literally, and I've been front row at concerts and everything like that. It's the loudest sound I've ever experienced.
Holy crap. Oof.
Yeah, it's crazy and it's very eerie. Like when I say it sounded like something in a horror movie, because it was right when the
Yeah,
needle
it's
went
like
on the
timed
record.
perfectly.
Good timing.
And the
Perfect.
situation is kind of like, yeah, it kind of lends itself to that too.
Exactly. And
But
Will, what do you have to add to that?
I mean, you guys talked about a lot. I will say this. I've been kind of gathering my thoughts, listening to you guys comment on it. But Pearl is my favorite in the franchise, as you guys know. But I do
Yeah.
think I do agree. I think not only is X it's probably one of the best horror films in the last 10 years. I think overall, although MaXXXine, I mean, we know where that stands in our ranking now. But that being said, I still think this is probably one of the best, or if not the best, trilogies or franchises in modern horror. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
thinking about other movies that have come out that are newer, and I honestly can't think of any that are as, I guess you could say, overall as a package complete as the three of these films. Um,
Yeah.
We'll
Can
get to
agree.
MaXXXine when we talk about that, but as far as my thoughts on X, I think out of the three of them, I mean, you could maybe say the same for MaXXXine in a sense. Pearl is more of a character study. Like I said, it's a much more intimate film overall, but I think X is the most self-aware in terms of like it's comparable to Scream, I guess, in some aspects. Like Scream kind of changed the way that people look at slasher movies. It was very meta in that regard, and I think
Mhm.
Yeah.
X does a lot of the same things. Like Gabe, you mentioned, like with the theme of like I don't want to say it on YouTube because I don't want to get censored, but the P word, right? It
Yeah.
mixes.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
have like that 70s style, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre aesthetic with,
Adult
the
films.
adult industry, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Adult films. And I just think it just goes together so perfectly. Like he found a way to weave those two things together in a way that just makes it so intriguing. And I think that's where a lot of the comedy comes in because, there are different ways that people look at sex and people view sex that make it, it can be intimate, it can be intriguing, it can be passionate, it can be, arousing, but it can also be awkward and funny at times. And I
Yeah.
think that's why the movie works the way it does. Like you have those moments where, like you were talking about, like when he's at the filling up the car, with the gas,
Mhm.
like stuff like that. It's just like
So good. I
small
laugh every
things like that. It's just,
never
it
gets
just
old,
it
man.
just works because
Yeah.
it's like there's that innuendo there, like there is in adult films all the time, but it just comes across as funny,
Yeah.
and Gabe, I don't think you have, but Chace, there's people in our community that are into like the Picorama stuff from like Vinegar
Yeah. Yeah.
Syndrome and stuff like that. I don't want to necessarily go off on a tangent about those movies, but if you've seen some of the movies that Vinegar Syndrome has put out in that genre, in the adult genre, that's the thing, man. Like you watch those movies today and they come across in the same way. They're just funny,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
at the
They
same
are.
Mhm.
time, like the stuff that they thought of for the innuendos it's genius. Like when you think about it, in order to like get the point across. And I think X does a lot of that, or it takes inspiration from those movies. So you can tell that Ty West is not only a student of horror and horror of the time, because there's a lot of influences with X. I mean, mostly the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but there's, again,
Mhm.
as we saw with MaXXXine, and we'll get to that later, there's a bit of a giallo influence there in
Yeah.
terms of
So much.
the slasher aesthetic. But I just think that it acts as kind of a commentary on movies and watching movies.
Yeah.
And I think the whole aspect of them going to create a movie, like renting the barn to film the adult movie, that offers a lot of different perspectives, like who's watching who, and
Mhm.
how do these people see themselves? How do they see each other in that environment? As that film progresses, there's a lot to be
Yeah.
said for that. I'll mention the dynamic between MaXXXine and Pearl, right? MaXXXine in X, when that takes place, she's the younger of the two. And she sees it as her time, right? It's her time to
Mhm.
shine. It's her time to become a star. Whereas Pearl, in the case of X, she's kind of like this shadow, like that's like lurking in the background, right? Her time has passed by her. She's now become this horrible, horrible person, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of duality there, and I guess you could say juxtaposition between the two of them. Whereas like MaXXXine is on her way to potentially becoming what Pearl is one day, right?
Mhm.
Like as where Pearl is in X in terms of what she's become. So I think that's an interesting dynamic. And it just the other movies don't do that. They're not set up in that way, and I don't think they're juggling as many themes as X did. Right, like when I
Yeah.
watch Pearl, like we talked about, it's a much more focused movie. It's pretty much a character study. There's not too much else going on in that regard. MaXXXine, I think, attempts to do a little more than Pearl did So I'd say in terms of trying to tackle some different themes, I would put MaXXXine in the middle in terms of how much it tries to attempt. I just don't think it. I don't think it executes them as well as X did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think X is the most. It's probably the most cohesive and well put together out of the three films, and the fact that it has to deal with a lot more in terms of the cast. I mean, the cast is much bigger, and he still pulls it off so well. That's a lot. So I think for that reason, X is obviously for a lot of people it's the most entertaining. But I do think overall it deals with a lot more themes than the other two movies, and it deals with them very well. You know, it presents them much better than at least MaXXXine does. I don't want to compare it to Pearl because Pearl is a completely different movie.
They're all I think they're all
in
three
my
different.
opinion.
Like,
All three of them are different, but
they're
MaXXXine, in my
capsules.
opinion, has I just think MaXXXine has threads that connect it closer to X than Pearl would. I think Pearl is kind of a separate entity from the other two films altogether. When I look at MaXXXine and I look at X, I see those two being somewhat similar in terms of their DNA, right?
Well, let's go ahead and dive into Pearl while you're on that. It's a good segue. Go ahead and dive into Pearl while you're at it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys know what's up with Pearl. I mean, I've talked about it before. I think Pearl is pretty much it. Mia Goth's performance in that movie is what
Unreal.
sells it to me. It's just absolutely one of the most insane performances I've ever seen
man.
in a horror film. Terrifying. It's like sad to a degree. You know, just how well like she does with that role. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about her performance that I haven't already said. I mean, that whole monologue when she's at the table in the kitchen there, you know, talking
7 minutes.
What is it? We clocked it in 7 or 8 minutes or something like that. It's crazy, dude. It's just
one take.
Like,
can you believe that?
One.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It was one continuous take. One continuous.
But
take.
Did she do it on the first take though, or did she do it multiple times?
As far as I've read, it was one complete take, man.
Wow.
One and done.
Yeah, she should have been nominated for that. 100%. I mean, like, I don't really care about the Oscars that much, but like, I mean, if we're gonna, sit here and critique performances and everything to that degree, like, I don't know how she wasn't nominated for Pearl. And I know it's because this is a horror movie, obviously, but I mean, I agree with Will where it's like that her performance is just something else with this movie, man. And she sells this movie 100%. Like, that's why you're so engaged with it, because like you're so intrigued with her. Not only she victimizes herself a lot, right? But she also, she's a piece of crap. But then sometimes you feel bad for her. Like you have all these different emotions with her. She's just all over the place. But yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Will. But yeah, I agree, dude. The Mia Goth performance,
that's fine,
killer.
Yeah, and obviously, this film, after, if you were to watch these in order, watching X first, you understand how she became who she is in X. And I think that's why I think Pearl is also an important film to watch. I mean, you have to watch all three of these films to understand what's happening. But I think watching Pearl and then going back and rewatching X, it changes that viewing experience as well, because now you can understand how her character in X got to where she is in terms of by that time, by that age. So it plays into that in a lot of aspects. But yeah, I just think Pearl, I mean, I'm kind of with you, Gabe. We talked about the differences between the two movies. Like Chace was saying too, there's certain people that are going to hold X in a higher regard than Pearl, but it doesn't necessarily mean that either film is better than the other.
Agreed. Yep, 100%.
I just think they're meant for there's two different audiences that they are attracting in terms of what people are looking for. Like I was looking for a character study. I just think it's one of the best character studies that we've gotten in recent years, right? So I just think it's an incredible movie, and just a complete portrait of someone who is willing to go to any length to be able to get the life that they want, and they're willing to just do incredibly devious, horrible things to get there. It's just it's just such a great breakdown of someone's psyche, as far as a character is concerned, right? And that monologue just sells it to you, like just how fucked up she is. It's just like I'm just thinking about it now, and it's like even though it's 7 minutes, it's like I remember it so well because it's just so fucking like nail biting. Like I could not look away, you know.
And it's filled with
I
like just like conflicting stuff, dude. I mean, like it's when
Yeah.
you hear the monologue, and it's funny if you watch it on YouTube and see people commenting on it, they kind of say the same thing where it's like you almost feel bad for her in a way, like even though you see
Yeah.
all this horrible shit that she's done because she's a horrible person, but like
Mhm.
there are some notes there that resonate with people where it's like, you know, like I'm not good enough, or like I don't think I'm gonna get to where I want to be, like you know the shit
Yeah.
that we all think about, and I think that's where it kind of emotionally hooks people, is that even though she's this, you know, horrible fucking, you know, she's a serial killer, but like there are notes there where it's like, oh, I resonate with that. You know what I mean? And I've
Yeah.
gone through those feelings before too. And her performance there just, you know, nails it 100%. Like it's not anything that I had seen in a long time. Um, it's a really it's I always want to, you know, when I see stuff like this, I always want to commend it, because it's like when you handle so many different themes, especially when it's just one character, and you're able to make me hate that character and love that character, and
Mm.
label her as crazy too. Like, I mean, there's just so many mixed feelings when you're able to do that. Like, you sold me, because that's super difficult to do, because usually with movies,
Yeah.
it's either that, you know, this character's a piece of shit, this one's really cool, but like when you have someone
It's
as
segmented.
yeah, and it's like when you have someone like Pearl, obviously she's a piece of shit. she's
She's
you know, she's demented, and but there
a
are
piece of
parts
shit
of
with
her.
layers.
Yeah, exactly. She has layers, and
Yeah.
I think that, you know, I also appreciate the fact that this movie isn't also, it's not a prequel in the sense that you see how she got, you know, crazy, because like the very first scene, she's already putting a pitchfork through the damn
Yeah,
She's
through this.
married.
She unmarried. Yeah. You know, she's like dancing around with a scarecrow and having sex with it, and like there's already something wrong, right? And that's
Yeah.
another fact that I appreciate about this movie, is like it doesn't show like how Pearl lost it. It's just like you're just thrown in there, and it's like she's already lost it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
this is just who she
Yeah.
is, and you're just seeing, you know, a small glimpse of what her life is. And yeah, it's a fascinating movie, dude. But that's why
It does,
I
you
put
know,
it
it
top of
dives.
the list.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, I was just gonna say it touches on that briefly. Like you don't see her losing it, like we're getting to that point, but
Mhm.
you know, there's other context and you know, evidence that's provided that helps you understand, like, okay, this is what she's dealing with, like her whole dynamic with living at home on the
Mhm.
farm, especially with her mother.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's definitely story elements in there that provide that context to the viewer to
Mhm.
allow them to understand, okay, well, this is why she's, you know, fucked up. I mean, she's probably fucked up anyway, but
Yeah.
her environment that that she's living in isn't helping, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too, like there's not a lot of other characters in this movie.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
there's
her,
It's
Harold,
it's
mom
her,
and dad.
five.
Harold,
Yeah,
yeah,
and then
5
the
or
friend.
6.
The
One
guy
of
that she has an affair with, and the girl, the
and the other
sister-in-law.
girl there, it was
And the auditioners.
Mhm.
yeah, that's pretty much it. So again, much smaller scale in that regard, and again, I just think it's she just sells it so well, and everyone else in the movie is fantastic. I really enjoyed the mother's performance, but that's the thing, Gabe. Like that's what's interesting about it too, is like you're kind of like fighting yourself as you're watching this movie, because like you don't support a lot of the things that she's doing.
Mhm.
But at the same time, there's like moments there where, you know, she is vulnerable. And that's the thing that people relate to, because we've all been in those situations. We've probably
Mhm.
had, you know, those thoughts at times, you know, that she's dealing with. It's just a matter of not acting on that, you know, and not,
Mhm.
you know, letting those impulses take over, which obviously, you know, isn't the case, but in the film. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's these movies, it's easy to like look at them and say, "Oh, well, it's not my kind of thing." But I mean, for so-called slasher films, I don't know if I would call Pearl a slasher film like I would X. I don't view it in
Yeah.
the same way.
Yeah. Agreed.
But I think that's why this trilogy is so popular, is because at least with the first two films, you know, we'll get into MaXXXine because I'm interested to hear, you know, all of our thoughts on that when they converge. But I think at least with X and with Pearl, I don't want to use the term elevated horror because I'm tired of people like
Yeah.
hating on that. But they just they're horror films, but they're offering so much more than your straightforward slasher film. Or in the case
Yeah.
with Pearl, it's like, okay, it's not just a film about, you know, someone that's a psychopath going around murdering people. Like there's just so much more going on there. and there's so much more at play. And I just think that's something refreshing. It's not like Halloween Ends, stuff like that, where people are like, oh, this, it is what it is. It's like polarizing. Like this trilogy, I think, is the most cohesive trilogy, or the most cohesive set of films that we've gotten in some time. I mean, and I would put the challenge out there to anybody else to come back and say whether or not there's any other current franchise that's out there that is as good as a unit, right? 3 of the films together as this one. So,
yeah. And you guys really said all excellent things. Yeah, and I like how Pearl got a little bit of a second win because of David Cornsweet in this movie.
Yeah.
Our new Superman. So it's gotten a little bit of a second win, even though it had a massive first win, because it definitely was the talk of the town, and they came out, I believe it was 4 to 5 months between each other. One was like early in the year, one was like 2/3 of the way through the year.
Yeah.
The monologue, everything like that. I also want to shout out the dance scene whenever she's doing her audition. That one was extremely well done as well.
Yeah.
But the chase sequence with the axe towards the end, that's really, really, really done well as well. And
yeah,
it's still a slasher, but in a much different way, because whenever you go back to like movies such as The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, that movie is still terrifying by today's standards. I will stand by that. That movie is creepy as hell. The way it's shot is horrifying, but it's also very, very slow paced. It's just more creepy than it is, how do you say it? Blood, guts, and gore everywhere. You know what I mean? Which is what X did differently, because while it did offer you that, it wasn't all up in your face 24/7 teasing you with it. And that's what Pearl did, while also paying homage to what was out around the same time as what the movie is set in, right?
Right.
And that's what I find so beautiful about Pearl and X. It pays homage to the time frames that he's filming in as well. The Technicolor blast, which I don't think we've talked about that yet. We may have, but the Technicolor blast over that, incredible. The 4K for Pearl is still amongst some of the best that you can get. While the resolution, because it's intentionally looking grainy, the HDR is one of the best uses of HDR that isn't a nature documentary that I've seen on a more modern movie. It looks insane with that Technicolor. I'd put it up there with like Wizard of Oz looks great. Doesn't get talked about enough, but that's in Technicolor. And the HDR looks crazy. Same thing with Pearl. So, that's really all I have to say. Just shout out every single person that was in that movie. Ty West, or whoever the casting director was for this movie, whoever did those casting calls, absolutely slammed it out of the park. They must have called Marvel, because Marvel's usually pretty good at casting people. So they must have gotten a hand, because they just absolutely destroyed it with the casting in this one for sure.
Yeah, it's a solid movie. I really, really enjoy it. What do you give it out of 10 out of curiosity? Because so X, would you give it a 10 out of 10?
Yeah, X is an easy 10 out of 10. I give
what about Pearl?
Pearl's a 9.5. I actually didn't care for it that much the first time I watched it, which is surprising. I had to watch it again because I didn't realize, all I knew is it was a prequel. It took me until my second viewing to understand what Pearl was actually trying to be. And it was a timepiece, a completely different movie, and to not compare it to X. And once I actually did that, a 9.5 out of 10 is what I give it. Because the slow parts in that movie are freaking slow, like really slow, The part with the person that she's infidelious with, I personally just didn't really care much for that dynamic that much. While it was cool and the way it paid off was cool, some of the parts, like whenever they're looking at like the adult movies, I believe they were the European movies in the cinemas, I just didn't really care. As cool as it was, I just don't think it really added that much more to the ultimate payoff. That's me trying to be nitpicky. It's just like, I think after I walked out of the theater, I think I gave it a 7 my first time. Yeah. So then I went back and I was like, you know what? There's no way I love the first one that much. This one isn't bad. Like, I need to go back and rewatch it, really dial in, really focus. And that leads me to where I'm at now.
Okay. But there's still like, I mean, you have a 10 and 9.5. That's pretty solid.
Yeah, easily. And Pearl is definitely not my mode. I've seen it 4 or 5 times, but I've seen X. Holy shit. Yeah, I've seen X a lot.
Over 10 times probably.
Yeah, over 10 times for sure. Gabe, why don't you open up the dialogue? Because I want to hear what Will says, but once you kickstart the dialogue for MaXXXine.
MaXXXine, man, I think so. And I want to preface by saying this too, like, just because we're ranking it, and I mean, obviously, I don't know Will's thoughts yet because you and I have talked about the movie, but I haven't talked to Will about it. Yeah, so Um, I'm not saying that it's a bad movie by just ranking it as the bottom tier. It's not a bad movie whatsoever. I think it's just I think Ty just kind of took a lot of different themes with this one and kind of try to push everything together, and it just didn't hit as hard as I wanted it to.
Agreed.
I think that there was just, the first two are just so laser focused on, MaXXXine and Pearl, and then this one, you're still following MaXXXine, but there's just so many plot threads going on. You know what I mean? That ultimately kind of just don't give me that payoff where I really want to see how everything's gonna, impact MaXXXine at the end. And the ending isn't. It's almost like too perfect in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like the bow ties. Like she's in a good spot and everything's okay for the most part. Um, it was not what I was expecting, and it's a conflicting movie. I need to watch it again, dude, because I've had so many
Agreed.
conversations about MaXXXine where it's like I don't know if for me as someone who was watching it, I had a problem with the narrative. So the biggest thing I think we talked about in the review was, as soon as they opened up with that shot of her dad, with her younger, which is a beautiful shot. I think it's a cool way to open the movie, but that also tells me instantaneously, I'm like, okay, the dad's like, that's the whole
Yeah.
thing. The circle's complete here, and that's how we're gonna finish this movie off. And my wife was watching it with me, and she, halfway through, she's like, oh, it's the dad. Like,
Yeah.
so now if that bothers you, like it kind of does me, because I really care about narrative and I don't want to be able to guess something like that in the middle of a movie, or the first third of the movie.
Yeah.
Then this movie could be great. I've talked to people where they're like, they consider this movie almost a parody, kind of that meta that we've been talking about, where it's like the narrative doesn't really matter in a sense. You know what I mean? Like when the detectives are there and I think you were talking about this, Chase, they catch the dude about to light MaXXXine on fire. The dad is about to light MaXXXine on fire, and then this shootout happens.
He
And it's like
goes
this
full Scarface,
generic,
man.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like a generic 80s
Yeah.
shootout. Like it's like so
Yeah.
just ridiculous and over the top. You know what I mean? You got like
Yeah.
I think one of the detectives had a revolver, and like one hand is shooting the dude on the balcony, and it's like falling down. And it's like
He's like RoboCop.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like just
Yeah.
so over the top. So it's like I really want to watch it again, because I don't know if that's what it is. I don't know if I'm just really focused pinpointing the plot and the narrative, and that's what got me. And I didn't really just kind of let loose and say, you know what, this is very meta. This is very kind of parody in a way. But my first response walking out of it, I was like, yeah, this did not hit as hard as MaXXXine and Pearl did. Yeah, at all. Because I feel like the first two took a lot of risks, where this one was a little bit more safe. It was bigger budget and a lot more safe, in my opinion. And it didn't take the risk that I thought that it was going to take. There are some fascinating scenes in here. I told you that I love that scene with her getting the molding done with the that
was
shit
really well
dripping
done.
down, and the hands behind her. I think there's some amazing scenes here, but it just doesn't really hit as hard. It doesn't take as many risks, and it's a lot more just linear.
Yeah.
It's not what I was expecting. It's not a bad movie. I forgot what I gave it during our review. I think I gave it like an 8 out of 10.
Yeah. I think you
7.5 or 8 out of 10, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just kind of took me by surprise with how different it is compared to X and Pearl. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think. I mean, I don't know if it was the narrative. I don't know if it's him not taking enough risks. I mean, I'm curious to see what Will's thinking about it, because
Yeah, we haven't talked.
I haven't heard I haven't heard his thoughts about MaXXXine at all. So lay it on us, Will. What did you think about it? I mean, you rated it on your on your ranking the lowest, so you didn't like it as much as X and Pearl.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll to quote you, I agree. I don't think it's a bad movie by any means. But I'll go back to what I said before I kind of get into some details here about it's although it still is a meta film, I don't think it pulls it off as well as X. I just think X, the delivery of all those themes was just it just hit home a little better for me. MaXXXine, I just don't think it was a little more, I guess we could say, convoluted. I agree with what you're saying. I think they were trying to do too much narratively with the different plot points that I think they kind of got in their own way a little bit, right? I don't want to use the word messy, because I don't want to say that, because there's a negative context to that, or a negative connotation to that. But I just think that although it was linear in the regards to the story in terms of the progression, I just think narratively they tried to tackle one too many things. And that kind of took away the overall experience for me. That being said, visually, I think the movie's incredible. To touch on that real quick, I love the 80s. I'm a big fan of the 80s aesthetic. Chace knows this very well. I mean, 80s, that's like, if I could relive any decade, it would be that. Or if I could live in any decade, it would be that. Because I was born in the 90s, so I didn't get to experience the 80s. But, seeing it in a movie like MaXXXine, it just, you can tell that the research was done. They really tried to pay attention to like the little things, like even the montage when it shows like a movie theater and like St. Elmo's Fire is playing or it's on the marquee, just stuff like that, man. It's like, and just walking around the city, like it just felt so much like it was that time, and this is coming from somebody, like, again, I haven't experienced the 80s, but I know, like, from my parents and older friends that, they nailed it, and I talked to some people about that particularly grew up in that era. And they said, yeah, man, like, it's just, there's a lot of nostalgia with a movie like that, especially when they do that visually and really try to do their best to represent a decade like the 80s. But that being said, I think it still plays some of the themes well. There's the whole thing that, people have to do anything for fame or in order to be famous, you got to be willing to cross the line and do whatever it takes. I mean, that's a big theme. They touch on the Night Stalker in the movie in particular. And, spoilers for anybody that's watching this at this point, if you haven't seen it, like, check it out. But, the Night Stalker is featured to an extent in this movie. I'm not going to go into how much, but they touch on the murders that are happening, being committed by the Night Stalker. And that's kind of the thing. There's a similarity between the Night Stalker and MaXXXine, right? They're pretty much, they know what they want, and they end up getting exactly what they want because they're willing to cross every line in order to achieve that, right? So there's stuff like that that's going on that I appreciate, that's pretty clear cut, like, that's easy to see. But I like how they did that. I like that there's that comparison between the two of them. The ending, again, I think it was predictable because of what happens in the beginning. With the clip of her father, like, I knew too. I was like in the theater, like, okay, this is where they're going with it. And they kind of, like, for me anyway, if you're paying attention, it's like not hard to see where they're going with it. And that's the thing. I think the ending being somewhat predictable, it's like I knew they were going in that direction. I didn't know exactly how they were going to get there, but you kind of got the idea that that's where they're going to go with this in order, like you said, full circle. So I just think anticlimactic, not necessarily. I still felt satisfied walking out of it. I just felt that it was a little less than what I was expecting, I guess I could say. Right? I expected something a little more, like, to end this trilogy. I expected a little bit of a bigger ending, and I just didn't get that. So that's why it fell a little flat for me, but still overall a really good movie, really enjoyable. The performances were all fantastic. Mia Goth, as usual, killed it. The visual style was incredible. I loved the work that they put into this, dude. Like, again, I love that 80s aesthetic, and this movie pulls it off so well. And I highly recommend anybody that wants to see, like, an accurate representation of the 80s, or at least that time period particularly, to check it out, because they really did do their research with that. It looks incredible. And again, it feels like you're there, and
Yeah.
people I talked to that grew up in that era, like, they said the same thing. They're like, yeah, dude, I felt like watching this movie. I felt transported back to that time period, just to see everything that's going on in the background. Like I mentioned, with the marquee, St. Elmo's Fire, like the music selection was fantastic. I think they got that band like Rat playing in there. They got forget what else, what the soundtrack was. The soundtrack was so killer, though. So many great music choices to accurately, represent what's happening. But yeah, overall, again, what did I give it? I think I gave it a 3.5 or 4 on Letterboxd. I don't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, it is the weakest in the trilogy, in my opinion. So
No,
Yeah.
that's actually extremely well broken down, extremely well said.
Yeah.
To give a nod to something I think you and I had talked about before, you might even said it earlier, the giallo, which is one of my favorite like horror subgenres, or really it's its own genre. It's so unique in its own right. There's so many nods through and through and through and through and through, and I really, really did enjoy this movie. I need to rewatch it again. This is one of the first times I had the opposite effect with Pearl. Pearl, I felt like I misunderstood it, and I was like, okay, I need to go back. You know, there's no way I'm not liking this movie. I need to go back. I got what I wanted out of it. This time, as time has gone on, I've liked the movie less as I think about it. I want to see it again, but like when I walked out, I gave it a 9, maybe even a 9.5 on the video review we did. I don't want to say what I'm sitting at, but I'm not as big of a fan as I was fresh
You're
out
at a
of the
7.
theater day.
You're at a
It's
7.
not far. It's not far away from that, but I feel like I'm just trying to nitpick, and I really did like even the Scarface-esque like shootout, everything like that, like just everything 80s, 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 80s. It gives you all of that, like anything 80s you can think of it. The VHS store was awesome. Everything about it was super cool. Mia Goth was incredible. A different type of acting in this one versus some of the other ones, but it's really, really, really good. I really do need to rewatch it so much. All of the themes that you had already pointed out were really, really well done. I liked like the cool little escalator ride up to the mansion in the
Yeah.
hills. I don't know
Yeah,
why
that
I
was
thought that
cool.
was cool as hell. But there's so many cool moments, and I really need to rewatch these because I feel like it's unfair for me to give like an official opinion on this one without having seen it as many times. I've at least seen Pearl, which is at least 5 times, you know?
Yeah.
If not as many times as X. I like it. I think it's awesome, but I definitely think it's the weakest, but it's by far not a bad movie. I would
Yeah.
put it above average in regards to what else we typically get in horror. And I'm not talking
Yeah.
about like a standard slasher that comes out and then one and done, right? Like one of those pump and dumps is what I like to call those types of horror movies. Here's your slasher of the month. You know what I mean? It's not one of those. It wasn't a mid-year dump and just forgotten about. It has a unique identity. And had this movie came before X and Pearl, I think it probably would have aged extremely well. You know what I mean? Like had this one been the first one and we didn't have an X and Pearl, but that's not the situation we're in. So now I've got to grade it as a coherent unit. And that's where I kind of struggle whenever I start looking at it. Is looking at it as a coherent unit. It's great. I agree with everything Will said. Where I would love for you guys to comment down below and as well point out a different trilogy in the horror or thriller genre that isn't like big things like Planet of the Apes or Mission Impossible or James Bond, anything like that. But a 3-movie set of a trilogy that is as good as this and coherent and as well filmed, as well made, and everything like that. Because it's going to be really hard. I feel like. I watch a lot of movies and I can't even get close to getting to even trying to mention something, you know? So I definitely need to, I wanted to shout out the scene in the alley with Mia in that one. That was a fucking awesome scene, man. That was like
that was
girl
cool.
power.
That was messed up.
Yeah, that was great, man.
A
I
lot
really
of
enjoyed
like
that scene.
people turned away, dude, in the theater when that
Oh, yeah.
happened. They were
You
like,
watched that? Yeah.
they were like,
They're
that's
whoa.
intense. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that might have been what, like, as it went on, because that was so intense so early on, I don't
Yeah.
think many things lived up to that scene. But I also
I
think
agree with
that's
that.
the point. You know what I mean? I really do think that's the point because there's sometimes, well, you can probably think of some better examples. I can't think of anything that it might be taking homage with that starts out stronger than it typically ends. But I think that's the point with this movie, and that's why I need to rewatch it. A lot of these corny parts, a lot of this and a lot of that I'm like, does this make sense? Does this add up? Does it come together coherently? I think it's a commentary of that time, even with giallo. You know, not all giallo is perfect. There's some absolute duds out there, just like with regular horror. But it really had some good homages, like with the VHS store scene and then the stalking scenes, everything like that. It was really well done. The Universal Studios lot scene, chef's kiss.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think it's important to note too, like we're not necessarily, and just to clarify, because again, people will watch this, or some people will watch this and say, well, you guys think it sucked. No one said that. I just want to put that out there. We're not saying that
Tarot
this movie is bad by any means whatsoever. Yeah, I mean the Universal lot was amazing. Like that whole
really
sequence. But as I said, I mean, I just don't think it completes. I just don't think it gets the narrative across as well as X. That's
Yeah.
the only thing. I'm not saying that it doesn't necessarily do a decent job. I'm just saying that I felt X was more thought. It was more fleshed
Yeah.
out, right? It was
Agreed.
more fleshed out. I think MaXXXine tries to tackle some of these things, and some of them it does very well. Like as far as like the commentary on Hollywood and the cost of fame and just
Mhm.
how brutal of a business it is and how cutthroat it is. I mean, there's accurate representations of that in this movie, you know, and there's, you know, one of the other themes is the whole idea of like art versus product, right? On
Yep.
one end, and that plays into it with the director's character, right? And her
Yeah.
conversations with MaXXXine, you know, it's like, you know, we're still trying to make art here, but unfortunately we have to battle with the forces of, you know, our overlords that are trying to sell a product, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So things have to be a certain way, and we, you know, sometimes you just have to do what you have to do in order to get it right, in order to do,
Yeah.
in order to get to where you need to be. I also think it's interesting that with this film we've kind of seen like MaXXXine's made it, right? Like this is
Yeah.
the culmination of the last two movies. Like with X, it's like you're on the outside looking in terms of wanting to be a star, wanting to be there. Same thing with Pearl, right? Now MaXXXine has attained what she's been or what we've been led on to believe that she's been wanting the last two movies, right? And
Yeah.
this is what it is to be there, and this is what the environment's like. It's horrible. It's, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's a very it's a brutal environment, and it's interesting to see her character not only struggle with, you know, her inner conflicts in terms of, you know, sacrificing everything to be where she is, but she's also dealing with like the real world issues that are happening in the world of this movie, like with the whole thing, you know, with
The
the
protests
whole
and
issue
everything.
with the Night Stalker and the protests and all this other
Mhm.
stuff going on. So, you know, there's a lot that's happening in the film, both with Pearl's character, or excuse me, MaXXXine's character internally, and then what else is happening around her. But again, it's a lot. It's just a lot to break down. But I agree with you, Chase. I think it definitely warrants a second watch because, and that's
Yeah.
the other thing. It's like one viewing, I think, is not enough to
Not
really
enough.
be able to take all this
Yeah.
in and break it down accurately. Like with X and Pearl, I've seen each of those movies almost half a dozen times
Mhm.
by now. I think I've seen Pearl probably 4 or 5 times. X, I'm probably on the next time I watch X will probably be my 4th viewing. So,
Mhm.
you know, we've had multiple watches to really dissect those other two films. And I just think MaXXXine, you know, we owe it to, you know, Ty West and crew to
Yeah.
give it another go around and see if our opinions change. But, you know, at first glance, it's pretty much where my thoughts are, you know?
And I think when you guys talk about it, it's like I just got a light bulb. And again, I got to watch it again because I really want to. I can't wait for the 4K to come out to watch it again. But
Agreed.
I think
Mm.
the thing that really threw me out is I wanted that. We were talking about kind of full circle. You know, you start
Mm.
with Pearl, kind of. You know, she's like what you said. Well, a shadow of herself. Then you get, you know, the prequel. You kind of see kind of like some events that led to that. And then I was hoping for MaXXXine to be all the stuff that you were talking about where, you know, maybe MaXXXine's kind of seeing the brutality of Hollywood and like the
Mm.
cutthroat of what that business is, and her maybe not even succeeding in it, right? And then just
Right.
ending up to be like what Pearl was. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
like I remember in X, she says something that was kind of it was pretty profound where she says something along the lines like, "You're just gonna end up like me." And I
Yeah.
and I thought that's where MaXXXine was kind of going. I thought MaXXXine was
Mm.
kind of gonna get exposed to, you know, how Hollywood is and the brutality of it. And I thought that, you know, by the end it was just gonna, you know, she was just gonna be a shadow of herself, just like Pearl was. And I
Right.
just kind of didn't get that vibe. It was just, or I mean, they don't do it at all. If anything, I mean, she's okay at the
Mm.
end. I mean, I don't know if they're
Mhm.
wanting to do a fourth, but I think that's where narratively it just doesn't do it for me. And I don't know if it's because Ty was thinking about doing a fourth one and he maybe had another idea that he was kind of, you know, set it to the side and he's like, let me just do MaXXXine and maybe I'll do this fourth one. But I think that's where it struggles because I mean, you have this trilogy that, you know, it emphasizes, like what you said earlier, this kind of juxtaposed relationship between MaXXXine and Pearl. And that's like the
Yeah.
central focus of, you know, these movies. And then the third one kind of does away with that. It's like, oh, the
Right.
dad's here, right? And you know, the dad, I mean, which, you know, I mean, he's intermittently popping up in the first one with the
Mhm.
TV broadcast and everything, but it's not, you don't get that kind of that juxtaposed dynamic where it's like, okay, she ended up just like Pearl did, and that's what I was kind of wanting with MaXXXine. I wanted MaXXXine to honestly just end up like Pearl did and make it full circle. You know what I mean? Just because I felt like that was so profound when she said that in X, where she's like, "You're gonna end up just like me," and I was like, that's what I was thinking the whole time. But I mean, Ty obviously took it on a different direction. So, I don't know. I mean, what do you, I guess like we already kind of talked about MaXXXine. What are you guys thinking about like this whole possible fourth installment thing?
I don't know, man.
question.
I mean, I'm trying to think of where else they could take it from here, you know, and that's the thing. I mean, when you get to like a fourth entry, it's like
Mhm.
as it is now, even though, and again, saying, you know, now there our thoughts about MaXXXine have been out there. Like we've all had our chance to kind of tell each other what we think. You know, here's where it gets into the territory of, okay, is a fourth movie needed? And seeing as they're going to go ahead with this, I mean, now they get into the potential territory where, okay, like, is there too much of a good thing now? Like, because what are you going to do with a fourth movie? Because as far as I'm concerned, even though I think MaXXXine is the weakest entry out of the three, I still think it's a solid end to the character arc of MaXXXine. It's a solid end to this story. It is
Yeah.
full circle
Mhm.
as far as I'm concerned. So, like, where do you go from here? Like, what is the fourth movie going to do? Are we going to start something else? Is there going to be a new, you know, a birth of a new character from this fourth film that we're then going to follow for subsequent films? I don't know. I don't know where they go with it. I don't know what else they do with it at this point that hasn't really been done with these last
Yeah.
with these three movies. What do you guys think?
Unless they do what I just said, if it's the only thing I'd probably want to watch is just kind of the downfall of Maxine, to be honest with you. Is
Mm,
like her
right.
breaking down to the
Yeah.
point where she ends up just like Pearl did. And
Yeah.
that's what I wanted from Maxine. So I mean it's a tough one for me. I don't want him to make it because I'm like, I feel like, Maxine is like what you said. Well, it's sufficient enough. I think that's fine just to end it there. And it's so risky, making another one when you've had three solid movies, even though we're, I know we're critiquing Maxine a lot, but he's made three solid movies.
Yeah.
And,
Mm.
doing another one, it's like, dude, that's a huge risk. So that's the only thing narratively I can see him doing.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I'm like, I don't know where the hell you go with it. I really don't have any idea what you could do with this character.
Can I respond to that? Because
Yeah.
I just had a really interesting thought here. So you just said the fourth movie for you, what you would want to see is that Maxine would end up becoming just like Pearl, right? As we,
Hmm.
as has been touched on, with some of the lines of dialogue from the two previous
Yeah.
movies. I don't that see look personally that won't work for me.
Hmm.
Interesting.
That won't work for me because I already think in some way, shape, or form, Maxine is like Pearl. It's just in a different context. So Pearl, for example, and tell me if you guys agree with this or not. Pearl never got to live her dream. She never
Hmm.
made it.
Yeah.
And in some semblance, like when we watch that movie again, we owe it to Mia Goth's performance for, being so convincing. But Pearl, in some aspects, has retained some semblance of humanity to a degree. Even though she's psycho,
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
still shows there's moments of vulnerability there that I think are much more profound than they are with Maxine's character. And what I mean by that is, as I said, Pearl never got to make it. She never got to live her dream. She now has to live the rest of her life a somewhat normal, regular existence, on the
Hmm.
farm, which is where, by the time X comes around, or the time frame that takes place in X, where we are at that point in time, that's what she is. That's what she's become, as we've talked about. With Maxine, she's made it. Okay. She got exactly where she wants to be. She has completely surrendered herself to the idea that she has been pursuing. I don't think she has any humanity left. And that's the difference. Like, there's that line at the end where I think there's a close up of the head. If you guys remember at the end of
Hmm.
Maxine, and she goes, "I just never want it to end." I think that's profound in itself, because I think what that means is like she doesn't want it to end, because if it ends, then it's over. She has nothing else anyway. She's given it
That's
all
all she
away.
wants
She's
to live
surrendered
for.
it all.
Yeah.
That is the only thing at this point that she is living for.
Yeah.
Right. So I think she's just as damaged as Pearl is, but in a different way. Whereas, you know, Pearl is damaged because she never got what MaXXXine was able to get. So she's living with just the existence of, you know what, I never made it, and now I have to live with it the rest of my life, that I was never good enough, that I'm not going to be a star. MaXXXine made it, and she has to live with the idea of like, okay, well, I'm here, but this is all I have. So if this doesn't work, I'm fucked. I have nothing else to live for. So it's almost like, you know, now you're in this environment where you've given everything away. You have essentially become, you know, as they say in Hollywood with actors, you know, they sell themselves to become a product.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's kind of where Ty West was going with the ending, in my opinion. So for them to then do a fourth movie and then kind of take that in a different direction, I don't know. I think it ends on a solid note right there. Right. Not that they can't explore it more. I just think that I think MaXXXine was meant to end the way that it ended, because I think that's the whole point, is that she gave away everything. She sacrificed everything to get to where she is. And now that she's there, it's almost like she's trapped, and it's like, that's all she has. That's the only thing that she has, which is in itself like horrible to think about, because there are no other options for her in life, you know, other than this.
Yeah.
So
I have a good middle ground to meet you guys in, because I figured one of you guys would say this, but I'm kind of hypothesizing that the fourth entry is not going to be about MaXXXine. I have a feeling they might try to continue Pearl's story. Because just think about the gap, unless they're trying to go to like the early 2000s horror and try to get like MaXXXine's probably upper 20s, probably entering her 30s. I don't think they say, but that's what I'd have to guesstimate. I'd have to assume she was in her early 20s in X. So I'd have to say probably approaching or getting to the mid 30s. But Pearl with the time jump would put us probably in about the 50s, 20 years before. And I feel like there's be a lot that you could do, especially with that time. You know, you could enter like the Alfred Hitchcock era of horror and really get a lot of influence from that. I think there's a lot that he can do. He clearly understands and has adoration for horror, and clearly understands it. Shout out another movie of his, House of the Devil, that really shows that he really appreciates 70s and 80s horror. So that would probably be mine. Give 2 movies to MaXXXine, 2 movies to Pearl. I think that's what they do. Otherwise, the only other thing, Gabe, I can actually see both of your points, like the complete downward spiral of MaXXXine, and it's not going to end up the same as like Pearl, right? Because Will, you said what I was thinking. If she loses everything, she has nothing. It's a great counterpoint to Gabe's great point. Like that's kind of what you want to see. You want to see her become Pearl, but at the same time, it's kind of impossible, because Pearl, the closest she ever got was a dance recital in a possible role, right? That we know of. You know what I mean? Who knows what happens? She's like 70. I don't think they ever. I mean, they kind of say her age.
I think she's 80. Up. Yeah, she's like
she's
in
up
her
there.
70s. I think she's up there, man. Yeah,
there's a lot of time to explore in that period. You know,
right.
All we know is she's a horny grandma in X.
Well,
that's all.
No, you are right though. It's again, we're led to believe, and this is again through the context of the last 2 movies and certain lines of dialogue that kind of feed us information here and there. We're led to believe that Pearl never made it, and that's the assumption that most people will go by. Like, well, no, she didn't make it. You know, unfortunately, she was one of the many unlucky people that just never even get to the edge of Hollywood, so to speak, and that's the interesting thing about that too. It's like with the dance recital thing, it's even that, like that to her is like her fucking golden ticket, right? Like in Pearl. But even that in itself is so far removed from what Hollywood is, right?
Yeah.
And like, that's what's crazy is that it's just, to her, it's just everything. Like that's everything. And yet it's such a small microcosm in a much larger picture, So I always find that.
I think it's interesting though, like that, even whether it's a dance recital or her being in, a successful horror movie, like and maybe this is something he could explore too. At the end of the day, it really it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? I think that at the end of the day, what the problem is with Pearl and MaXXXine is like this kind of constant like admiration for attention. And I think whether you're in Hollywood or not in Hollywood, it's like you're not getting it, and it's not because of you being in Hollywood or in the dance recital. It's because like there's it's something to do with you. You know what I mean? Something's going on with you that's impeding on your life, and I don't know if that's something that he can explore. And I think that's more so what I was kind of talking about with like her becoming Pearl. Obviously, she's not going to be like a murderer or a serial killer or something like that, but I think she can maybe end up to where it's like even with this Hollywood thing, I still I'm still not really where I want to be. I still don't feel like I have that admiration with what I was thinking this was going to be. He can maybe explore something like that, but it's just a risk, man. I just don't know if it's worth it, to be honest with you. Then when the more we talk about it, there's so many cool ideas, especially that Hitchcock idea that Chace threw out. I think that's a really cool place for him to go, because it's less risky because you're going backwards. You're not continuing the trilogy, right? So like it's like, okay, we can do something else that's different. But I honestly, if I had to give an answer right now, I'd say leave it alone. I wouldn't want another entry whatsoever.
I want to see him do something new, personally.
Yeah, I want to see him tackle something else.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's a talented guy. I mean, he's a great writer. Like what you said, Chace, he is, he's obviously, he knows horror. You know what I mean? I don't know what else he's interested in doing, but I mean, I want to see it, and even if it is something else in the X universe, I'll go see it. But it's like, I think he's had his time here, and I think it's time to kind of, say goodbye.
I think we should get a Kid Cudi solo movie for sure.
A prequel movie for Kid Cudi.
Prequel for Kid Cudi.
Oh shit!
Why not? You get to follow his adult film journey before the gas station.
That'd be cool. But yeah, I mean, it's a great film trilogy. Again, we're not knocking MaXXXine. I think all of us really enjoyed MaXXXine. But
I love them all.
Yeah, they're all great movies. I think X and Pearl are obviously the heavy hitters, and MaXXXine is kind of. It's something we just have to watch again. I'm curious to see how we feel in a few months. Yeah, maybe we can kind of do a review 12 months from now after we've seen it a few times, just to kind of digest it and process it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Needs at least 4 more watches for sure. I'll be watching the 4K at least twice the day it comes out. I don't know about you.
Well, hopefully they do a damn steelbook.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what I want, man.
God,
they will though. If it sells well enough, they'll do it. Like even if
it's
we might have to import it like we did with Pearl though. That's the thing, but I'm willing to do that.
That's the annoying part. Is just I just don't want to have to go through the whole process of importing.
Oh, I get it.
Like I just paid $85 for that freaking X steelbook, man, because I missed out on it when it first came out. I'm happy, but my wallet's not.
That's what matters. No, the wallet.
The wallet will recover.
Yeah,
the wallet gets fed.
The Chace just has a big shit-eating grin on his face because he's like, Gabe is just spending money. He's just spending money.
He just enables me, bro. Like he had texted me. He was like, I told him that day, I'm like, I'm good, bro. No more. And then like an hour later, he's like, hey, Killers of the Flower Moon's on sale. And I'm like, oh my God, dude. And then I ended up buying it. I'm like, no more.
That's awesome.
No more. And then a week and a half. Oh yeah, when I was on the cruise, you guys are talking about Godzilla, and I'm like, God, damn it.
I even went the extra mile to tell Will. I was like, all right, do you want to buy it for him?
Oh no, I appreciate you guys so much.
It was already a done deal.
I wanted it. Yeah.
No, we got it, man.
I didn't know how limited it would be, so I figured you'd punch air once you got done off the cruise. And if you,
I would have. Yeah, you guys know me too well. I would have. But
well, you know what? That pre-order has been closed. I don't know I don't know when that happened, but yeah. Speaking to that, the Godzilla store pre-order has been closed. So now, unless the Steelbook, is the Steelbook still around? I think the Steelbook sold out on Target already.
Sold out on Target, but I mean, it hasn't come out through any other platforms as far as I'm aware.
True.
But I mean, I could see that thing selling out. You know what I mean? Because like the one for Civil War sold out pretty quickly. Like that one's kind of hard to get a hold of. Yeah.
I can't find it at all. But I'll be fine with standard as much as I adored that movie. But that Godzilla set is going to be one of the priciest things in 4K history. I'm calling it right now, man.
Really?
A lot of people got it. I just think that like just for the packaging, we're going to get a standard or something else. The packaging is what's going to be, because I figure it's going to be super limited. And it's not a cheap set. It's like
have they done any like unboxing videos? Like, I mean, I'd imagine there's some
Japanese
from like
ones?
Japan.
It's the same exact one. And it's
the same one,
man. it really is probably a top 5 box set I've ever seen.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited.
looks
We should
amazing.
probably do an unboxing ourselves.
A
when we
trio
get it.
unboxing.
Yeah.
3
Why
different
not?
angles, 3 different lightings, 3 different voices. Just all 3 of us talking over each other at the same
Why
time.
not?
Yeah,
Yeah,
guys.
like 3 kids on
Yeah.
Christmas, like getting their gifts.
Yeah,
at the
yeah, we
same
could just
time.
comment on it. We just somehow make it an hour and a half long unboxing where we just
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
gush
Just
over the
slowly.
whole thing.
Let's
Just each page, just hold up and let them read it. Read it out loud like it's reading Rainbow. Yeah.
Oh man.
Hey, before we move, like, so we got a little bit of time left. If you guys want to kill, I don't know if you guys want to shout out any releases that are coming out that you guys have either picked up in the last couple weeks or anything coming out in the next. I guess we could say
Opera.
3 to 4 weeks. Anything in August, yeah. Other than Opera's the big one. Opera's
Yeah.
it's big.
Well, you guys
for
can
us.
talk opera 1 second. Be right back.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for it, dude. I actually got my shipping notification, which is great. So
Yeah,
that's
I'll
good
be here
news.
Tuesday.
Yeah,
Super
so
stoked. Honestly, it's
pumped for
actually
that.
pretty easy waters for me for a couple of months. I think you and I were
Mhm.
privately talking about this the other day.
I do
And
remember that. Yeah,
yeah, like I think the summer, the beginning of the year was rough. October to January was like, oh my God, there's a lot coming out I want to get. And I feel
Yeah.
like it eased up. And then this summer's been pretty crazy. A lot of great releases, but there's nothing that I'm absolutely foaming at the mouth that isn't Godzilla, that isn't Nightmare on Elm Street, that are givens.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
The biggest one is Trick or Treat from Arrow Video. That's probably my most
Yes.
anticipated one. That is insane. That's one of my favorite horror movies ever. I think that movie's a
Yeah, Trick or
masterpiece.
Treat's awesome. I was happy to see that got announced. That's definitely day one for me as well.
Yeah, I'm so surprised Scream didn't do it because they just did a Blu-ray like in 2019 or 2020.
Yeah, now that Arrow release, that is US as well, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's US and day one.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I'm just gonna go week to week. I'll just kind of shout out stuff that I already have pre-ordered, just off
Yeah.
the top of my head from what I remember. Furiosa, which I have yet to see.
Yes.
So we'll maybe
Oh, yeah,
do
you
a
didn't
Mad
go.
Max. What's that?
You didn't go. I forgot about that. I thought you went.
Yeah, I never had the chance to go. I just got so busy around that time, and I was like working crazy days on the job, so
Yeah.
I never got around to seeing it. Wanted to see it in theaters, but again, was disappointed to hear it didn't have a good theatrical run. But I am curious to watch the movie itself
love
and
it.
kind of see what I think about it. So yeah, Furiosa, got that steelbook. That's coming out August 13th. About a week away, give or take. So next week, have that to look forward to. Let's see what else we got going on here. I'm just scrolling down.
He's talking about physical media releases.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah,
talking
anything you're
about stuff
stoked
that's
for.
coming up. Furiosa, Gabe. I got Furiosa coming in
Steelbook.
next week.
Oh,
I
it's
got
next
the Evil
week.
Dead Steelbook. Looking forward to that. Yeah, Furiosa's next week. Evil Dead is
Okay.
on the 20th.
Oh, Furious is next week?
Furiosa's
fast.
next week, the 13th. Yeah.
And Elm Street is when?
Elm
September?
Street, I think, is September. Yeah.
Okay.
Hold on. I got the Discord up right now. You know it's
Yeah.
in there.
They're doing a Joker Steelbook that's coming out on the 20th as well. There's a lot of decent
A
releases on
Joker
the 20th. You got-
Steelbook?
Yeah,
Mhm.
Joker 4K.
Where is this?
Steelbook.
I have to see
It's
it.
a
like-
Walmart exclusive, supposedly.
I don't know how I feel about that. Like it's already
Yeah.
I already have the Manta Lab Steelbook for it, but it's like that movie really didn't have a lot of like promo artwork for it. So I'm like I don't know like what
It
else you could
didn't.
really do.
And here's the thing, man. Even the Steelbook, I'm looking at the Steelbook art. It's nothing to real. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't really grab my attention, to be completely honest with you.
Walmart exclusive here. I'm
Um,
looking at it right now.
the
Oh
Evil
yeah, it's
Dead
just
one I
like
like.
it's just him
It's
dancing.
just him kind of, yeah. And then
Yeah.
Return of the Living Dead, that one looks okay. I kind of wish it looks a little lazy with like just
does,
the
the green.
smoke from like the
Mhm.
like the green toxic smoke from the barrel. Like I wish they
The
could have
trioxin.
made that a little more detailed. But Return of the Living Dead, I don't know. I might grab that. I'm not sold on that one yet. Evil Dead, I'm grabbing
Day one. And Drive.
day one. Drive, yeah, Drive is I
Drive.
think the end of the month. Drive is definitely, I'm definitely grabbing that.
So
That's
Chase can finally watch
that's
it.
gorgeous.
Yeah. I've been waiting. Once I got announced that. So I don't have to have a standing
Drive,
memory of the second
man.
sight one. I also
I
wanted
got
to
some
shout this
Kino
out.
stuff coming in too. Sudden Death. I'm a big Jean-Claude Van Damme fan, so I'm excited for
Sudden Death's
Sudden
good.
Death on 4K from Kino. So that'll be out the end of the month as well. So I'll be grabbing that.
Guess what got announced yesterday that I'm super stoked for?
Mm.
Trauma is releasing on Blu-ray the Toxic
Yes.
Crusaders series.
Yeah.
So fuck yes.
Yeah,
on
that's
that.
a big one for it's a big one
Yeah.
for Chace.
Fuck
He's
yeah.
all about the Toxies.
And if you haven't, there's a video we have of me doing one of our first reviews ever of me unboxing the Toxic Avenger 4K set, and it's the
That was
thumbnail
one of
with
the
me
first
kissing.
reviews.
That was like I think the very
check
first
that
one I
out.
ever did.
That was
Kiss
that
it
was
up.
one of my favorite thumbnails at the time.
Yeah, we'll get more
Like
creative
at
like
that
that.
point. I missed that thumbnail. Actually, no, I don't. Right. I just remembered what it was. It was like you making out with the Avenger.
Tongue kissing it. Oh, Drag Me to
start
Hell's
laughing
coming out too. I
Oh,
forgot
man.
about that.
So is Phantoms is already out, but they're doing
Dude, hey, Phantoms is actually really good. That's a
I need to
really
watch it.
like under the radar, very underrated movie. I highly recommend picking that up if you guys ever get the chance to grab it on sale. Gabe, I think you'd enjoy that too. Like again, it's like a lot
Strangers.
of people haven't seen
Mm.
that movie, so I
I'll
would
check it
pick
out.
that up. Yeah, Phantoms.
Strangers got a
definitely.
4K.
Did you guys watch the Bike Riders movie? I know we had
No.
talked about it, but
No.
I didn't see
No.
it. That one's coming out. I kind of want to watch it.
Hmm.
I don't know. It really
Strangers
didn't get any
4K.
wind.
Which
Yeah,
one?
no, it didn't really have a lot of buzz. It was the Bike Riders with Tom Hardy and
Tom
yeah,
Hardy
yeah,
and,
yeah.
Butler.
Yeah.
But I'll look for that. I mean, that might be coming out at some point. I'm sure. Even if they just, I mean, I don't know if they'll do a 4K. They'll at least do a Blu-ray.
No,
But
they got
yeah,
the 4K
September-
coming out.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Oh, when's that? I haven't even seen that.
I don't know the.
There's so many releases, man. It's like ridiculous to keep track of all this.
August
get the watch.
13th.
Oh
Shit, in a
man,
week.
that's next week.
Yeah.
The Bike Riders is getting a 4K next week.
That's next
Yeah.
week. I didn't even realize that. Holy shit!
Yeah, I didn't realize
way,
either,
really?
dude. I've been super
Has it been
busy.
out that long? I
mean,
it
it
just came out.
Yeah, I feel like it just came out.
I think
too.
the theatrical run was kind of short. I think it,
Mm.
it had its like first 2 weeks where it made its most money and then just kind of started going down
Yeah,
from
I
there.
mean, that's it for August. I don't know if we want to touch on September. I know what I'm getting in September. Chace, I'm definitely getting The Strangers. I'm getting Long Legs. I'm going to get Wind
is
River.
coming out.
Wind River is an amazing movie. You guys should.
The
if you
original
haven't seen Wind
Strangers
River-
is
The
coming
original
out?
Strangers got announced.
Oh, I'll buy that.
And
100%.
You're Next.
I love the original Strangers.
Yeah. Oh, You're
You're
Next. I
Next.
forgot about that too.
Remember, I don't know if you pre-ordered it. I still got to do mine, but I will.
I didn't
Holy
pre-order it yet. I got to get on that. I'm slacking, man. There's too many friggin' movies coming out,
Dude,
dude.
this is getting. I mean, and maybe
keep
we
track
can do
of
a
everything.
whole freaking video on how expensive this hobby's getting, dude. Because honestly, it really is. It's ridiculously
Yeah.
getting overpriced.
You know what you could do to fund like probably 6 months of collecting? If you
Still have
turn,
the shit I
you've got those 3 Batmen over there.
Oh,
you could auction those off for a lot.
Sell those, yeah, dude. That's a good
that
like
whole
2.5,
set is over
3 months
$1,000
worth of
probably. To
purchases
be
right
honest with
there.
you, yeah.
It's just one movie for
Exactly.
multiple. Is all I'm saying.
No,
man.
I'm good
You know
on
what I
that.
mean?
And that's my holy grail right there. That's why it gets its own
Man.
shelf, man.
That's fair.
But yeah, you know what though? We can do Chace, maybe you and I can do this because we're not as good as Gabe is at saving our money, so we can
True.
we'll do a separate episode. Body Double is a big one for me though, guys. At the end of September, I do want to shout that out. Body Double. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I'm like a huge Brian De Palma fan. Body Double, fantastic movie. So I'm excited for Body Double. That's coming out on Steelbook. I believe September 24th. It can be pre-ordered on Amazon now. So
What was the Arrow release that was coming out there that I was talking to you about?
Oh,
I think it was Chace.
Trick or Treat.
Oh, Trick or Treat. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, Trick
that
or
one I
Treat.
definitely want. Yeah, I'm excited for that one.
Yeah. Arrow's putting out what are they doing, Chace? They're doing the Friday the 13th reboot, which a lot of people are excited for. So, that should be that's in September. I think that's middle of September. So, yeah, man, I mean, I don't know. There's still more announcements that are going to get made for like September and October as well. So, as we get closer to the end of August, we'll probably have a lot more lined up for October as well. So, I'm curious to see what else we end up getting, but I don't know. So far, it's looking pretty solid. overall.
Yeah. 100%. Oh, and that wasn't that the Seven Samurai thing?
BFI.
Oh,
BFI, yeah.
BFI. Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, I gotta
get be on the lookout for that. And there's too many things. I haven't even pre-ordered some of this stuff that like Chace was talking about. Like You're Next.
I need to,
still
because
gotta
that's
get
going to
that.
be, if you want that LE, for anybody that hasn't checked out some of our other stuff, you're really going to want to check that out, because it yeah, those LEs for Second Sight sell out quick. When they're gone, they're gone. And if you don't care for all the extra, those are worth the extra goods and things you get. Those are worth the extra $20 that you pay for the LEs for sure.
And You're Next for me was a pretty wildly entertaining movie. I really enjoyed that movie. So
it's been a year since I've seen it, but I remember really enjoying it, because it's one of those few examples where things don't go the way you expect them to go, and I think it's really well done.
Awesome. All right, guys. Any other thoughts? I mean, we pretty much closed our thoughts out on the Ty West trilogy. Any other closing comments that you guys wanted to shout out or get out there?
Support good cinema, and whenever they announce the U.S. release of the trilogy, buy 10 of them each.
Okay.
I'll ditto that. Let's just go with that as the closing thought.
Oh man. Yeah, speaking of supporting good cinema, Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey available for pre-order now on Steelbook. Check it out.
The Blu-ray?
Everybody.
Oh, I already have that.
Fantastic. No, I think isn't it the 4K?
A 4K?
Yeah, is it a 4K?
Chace, you're gonna make Chace go broke, dude. He's gonna go to bankruptcy.
You know you want it. No, it is a Blu-ray. I'm sorry, Chace. I didn't mean. It's a Walmart exclusive Blu-ray Steelbook.
Oh yeah, I bought that. It was like $18 in the clearance bin, and then I bought it. I found it on eBay though.
Wait,
4K.
how do you already have it?
Yeah, it's been out, dude. I have it. Hold on.
Oh, because this is saying it's exclusive to Walmart. Like
Walmart does
September
that. Target
3rd.
does
is
that.
Is it a reprint though? Like that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Like, I want to see which one he has, because like they'll do that sometimes. Where I remember like Best Buy had sold like the Joker Steelbook, and then like a month later, Target was like Target exclusive, and it was the same freaking one.
See?
Yeah, so if that's like the worldwide available art for it, that could be the case. I don't know if that's the same one you were looking at, Will.
Show it again, Chace. Yeah, it looks similar. Maybe it is a reprint.
It's probably a reprint,
so
or it's just a worldwide available art.
Buy. Well, or that was Best Buy now, because I'm noticing that Walmart's doing that. They're re-releasing a lot of the former Best Buy exclusive Steelbooks as Walmart exclusives now. But
interesting,
dude. You know, the Winnie the Pooh on the cover. I don't know. I mean, the artwork's looking good. I mean, I might snag it. Why lie? Why lie?
Why lie? He's like, I'm just gonna buy it, and I'm already pre-ordering Seven Samurai, so I'm done this time for real. Okay?
No, you aren't.
Yes,
I'm gonna find that one eBay link that just sends you down a spiral.
No more. This is it.
I got you, man. You're never quitting this. I will forever be that mosquito that
I
buzzes
got you,
around.
he says.
Yeah.
You are never.
You make me poor.
You're never retiring. You will be working forever.
Jesus
and buying movies
probably.
Forever. I will make sure of that.
Cool. All right, guys. We appreciate you guys listening. As always, comment down below. Let us know your thoughts on the X trilogy and upcoming releases, and we will catch you guys on the next one.
Later.